Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Deborah Adelman, and I am the chair of the safety subcommittee of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, whose chair is actually in attendance, Nat Welch. And the time is now 5:04, and I would like to call this meeting to order. And I want to just ask Marcia before I take a roll call, will I have the capability to share screen, is that correct?
You should, and if not, I will give you the co-host abilities.
Okay, terrific.
You should be able to share, no problem.
Okay, perfect, thank you very much, great. So again, thank you everybody for joining. I'd like to start with a roll call to make sure that we have everybody, and then I will appoint the recorder. So when I say your name, if you would be so kind as to indicate that you are present. Dorcas Miller. Sorry. Dorcas Miller, are you here?
She may be having problems with.
Okay.
Or she's muted. She may need to unmute.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, there she is.
All right, terrific. So Dorcas, if you could just note either in the chat or verbally that you're present.
Present.
Thank you. Mary Beth Barker.
Present.
And I am Debbie Adelman. I am present, so the meeting has a quorum and we can proceed. Mary Beth, you have been doing a fabulous job at doing minutes. Would you be so kind as to be the recorder for today's meeting again?
Sure.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And the first item up on our agenda is a approval of the minutes. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I did not, unfortunately, share this ahead of time, and that wasn't very nice of me. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these up. Bear with me. And let me just get rid of this. So what I'm going to do is sort of scroll slowly. Sorry, this was already fixed. I apologize for that. So with the exception that we just have to remove the comments and clean the document, are there any comments or questions on the minutes?
And I'm motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Okay, let's take a roll call to approve the minutes. Dorcas Miller, the motion is to approve the minutes.
Aye.
Mary Beth.
Approve.
And I also approve the minutes of the November 15th Safety Subcommittee meeting of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop sharing, but obviously I did send you a copy, and I think we'll be sort of looking at this as we go through the agenda for today. So just continuing on in that agenda, the next item is committee business. Discussion of any follow-up items from the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee meeting of December 1st. I don't know if, or recall specifically if you all were there. I don't have a follow-up item from the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee meeting of December 1st, but rather the continuing expectation that we will really in short order come back to that group with what our specific recommendations are. Since we already determined as the minutes we just read indicated, what the scope of the committee is. And again, I'm just going to read the motion from last time. That the scope of this subcommittee is to include making recommendations, not determinations, to the full committee about speed limits, efforts to increase safety awareness, and management of e-technology. So 3 things: recommendations, not determinations about speed limits, efforts to increase safety awareness, and management of e-technology. And so really, the question I think before us is, what is the next step for this committee? What does that look like? And I know we have Nat here, and you may have a position, or you're just going to be, as you said, a member of the audience. I obviously have a position, but Mary Beth and Dorcas, I'd like to hear from you first, I think.
I would like to recommend that we establish a speed limit of 20 miles per hour to the committee, that we set up a safety education program in the schools, where at that point we might hand out belts at the safety education program. I think the younger ones will love it. The older ones will probably not be interested. And I think that is the whole idea of safety education, is safety awareness. So I think that's where we should go. I also think that our committee may not need to exist for a couple of months until we're further along in the process, because we probably will have to work on the safety education part. But up till then, I don't know if there's much we can do.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're in lockstep with me, but let me first, Mary Beth, what's your reaction when you hear that?
Well, I'm not sure when Dorcas says we should. Does that mean we, meaning the 3 of us on the safety subcommittee? Does that mean people on the larger Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee? Does it mean the town? I guess I'm a little unclear. I don't know if I have the
bandwidth, let's say.
The bandwidth just to do that. I think it's a great idea, but I don't know that it falls in I don't know who the we is that is going to execute this and operationalize it and, develop a curriculum and all of that. It seems like a lot of work. And so I'm a little confused by that. On the speed limit, I don't think, I guess I always envisioned something like a message on speed limit that like you adjust your speed according to conditions, using common sense and courtesy.
Yep.
But it depended on conditions, but maybe speed limit depending on conditions not to exceed X number of miles per hour. I don't know enough about this, the number of 20 miles per hour. I don't know the research on that. Like, why is 20 miles per hour any better than 15 miles per hour, 25. I just don't know. I would like to know more about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yep, and I'm in agreement with you. So if I tackle the first one, and Nat can keep me honest, as a subcommittee of another committee who reports, gives recommendations to a government group, I think that all we could do, and it's not all, putting in quotes, would be to provide, I'll call it a white paper, a couple of paragraphs, not anything large, but some amount of background information on safety and rail trails. And then really just an outline of the key areas that we think that the full committee should consider for an awareness campaign. And then they in turn would give that to the government, who's the one that's going to have to start to decide, yes, we agree, we will budget this. So I feel that our role would be, kind of like I did with the e-bike, a couple of paragraphs, maybe a couple of pages, here's some background and history on safety and rail trails and the evolution of it with a footnote to e-bikes. And then basically a straw model outline of what awareness, for example, in the schools would look like. And then just my little pet project would be really leveraging our senior community, not only because I'm approaching that age, but yes, in the schools, but then leveraging the folks that, I'll just say over 50. And that's all, I feel like that's all we can do is we can give the background, give an outline, give it to the full committee. And the full committee has to give it to the town because they're the ones who, to your point, they have to fund it. We're not going to do it. But let's just full stop because both Marcia and Nat were blessed to have them here. Would your reaction be?
So I think the purpose of the subcommittee is kind of vet the ideas and have a conversation. You don't, Mary Beth, to your point, you don't need to be the ones to go into the schools and educate. And in fact, Safe Routes to Schools, I think does a lot of that work. So you might, one could imagine that the subcommittee will hold a meeting at some point and say, we want to talk about safety education in schools and invite public to attend. You can hear ideas from the public, you can have a conversation, and then you can say to the full committee, hey, we talked about this, we think this is what we should do. Full committee can have a conversation and then make a recommendation to the town to, support the Safe Routes to Schools group, for example, with a couple of other ideas. So I think the purpose of the safety subcommittee is to spend a little bit more time on issues related to safety and allow the public to come in and make comments and then to deliberate as a group and make recommendations to the full committee without feeling like you have to go out and do some work afterwards.
Okay. That's really helpful. I feel like that's what I'll say I forgot is the value of the public.
Right.
And so maybe, and I'm not forgetting about the speed limit, but I feel like we're going to wrap that right in. And maybe what our next step could be as a subcommittee would be to recommend to the full committee that we have a couple things. Number one, some public hearings, maybe one, depending on what people's appetite, hybrid of people can be in person. We would have to develop what that forum looks like. I think that would be in our scope. Number two, we could, if you want, also recommend a survey, much like they did in the Junction Park. What are your top safety concerns? Get some data, things like that. Again, just kind of building that groundswell. And then once you've conducted the public forum, which again would be open to the public, it would be very structured. People would know what the ground rules are. Combine that with a survey so that if people couldn't attend the forum, they have another opportunity. To Nat's point, we then bring that information together, bring that to the full committee with a suggestion. Are we getting closer? Is that kind of?
I think that works. I mean, you as a committee, one of you could be interviewed by the Concord Bridge as a way to introduce people to, hey, we're going to have a survey, we're going to have a meeting on this. I think that it's balancing creating the forum for the conversation with feeling the accountability to actually do the work. Those are two very different things, because in the end, someone else is going to carry out the work. I mean, we have a responsibility in our charge to make these recommendations. And the thought was the safety subcommittee would do some of the background work. So that's the idea behind it. And to the point about bandwidth, this is a volunteer role, and I'm very aware of all the work that each member does to make this thing happen. So anyway, I'm an audience member. It's really up to the committee to have the conversations. But you asked, Deborah, and I wanted to say that.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Mary Beth Dorcas. Dorcas, your hand is raised. You don't.
Yeah, I was wondering, do we actually have a stop sign at every place where the trail intersects with the road?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. My riding the trail, yes, I think there is.
Okay, good.
Marcia, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that the issue of speed was a part of that conversation with the multiple communities. And I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to go back to the Friends and find out if they were going to do a follow-up on that issue to let them know that that's something that you are interested in pursuing and are thinking about at least no more than 20 miles per hour. It may be more appropriate to even lower that speed around West Concord Village, where there's more traffic and more congestion. So I applaud the idea of looking at speed limits, but I would like to make sure that it's something that might be along the entire length of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, or at least part of the conversation amongst all of the communities to make sure that we're not ahead of the curve. Just my thought.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Marcia, because they did indicate at the meeting that there would be another meeting, and they did indicate that speed limit would take it has to be its own meeting, really, because it's going to take so much time. So I think there are things we can do. We can get the public opinion. We can, as Nat mentioned, begin this sort of awareness of the forum and include, for example, in there, what do you know about speed limits? Are you aware of this group? And the survey would function both as information as well as awareness. Mm-hmm. And we can make it clear to the full committee, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee, that yes, we want to do the survey in the forum, but a third recommendation to your point is that we get back to the Friends and say, are you going to have the meeting on speed limits, even if we do include that as one of our discussion points in the forum?
Just so you know, I'm sorry, Deborah, just so you know, so I have sent an email to the Friends asking them to consider a meeting in the spring. And topics still TBD, but I have a feeling e-bikes and speed are going to be the two hot topics. Plowing will not be a hot topic.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I was sharing before, I probably shared a little bit too early, but let me just share it again because obviously we've already talked about it. This was just something that I had circulated during the week. We don't own this. This is just something that I was made aware of. You can see at the top right, it says New York City, obviously a very different environment. It's how another community, again, not rail trail. I want to underscore, not rail trail, just tried to tackle awareness. And what I found really helpful is it immediately highlighted moped and scooters. They are not e-bike. And so when we think about the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, the first question that comes up is, what types of vehicles are permissible? If right now, e-bike class 1 and 2 are permissible, as well as certain others, terrific. I don't have the answer for that. And that was what just jumped out at me is, and if somebody here does, I appreciate it. For the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, do they already notate moped and e-scooters is not permissible? I don't know.
I sent a note to Galen Mook, who's executive director of Mass Bikes, and I asked him if Massachusetts had developed a similar graphic yet, and if he could share it with us. So we'll see if he has anything.
Yeah. And, to the point that we're talking today, another, not today, but another recommendation could be of this subcommittee to the full committee is that Concord recommends to the Friends clarity on the types of vehicles that are permissible and make sure that those are well understood and that we already know what the signage is. So that was already proved. That's terrific. The rules, excuse me. But once we go to the Friends and ask them, has this been communicated? We can bring that information back to the full committee, again, as part of this information gathering. Because if I didn't know the answer, it's possible others don't know the answer, which means people may be using the rail trail with vehicles that are not permissible, creating unsafe conditions. Potential unsafe conditions.
The problem is enforcement. There is going to be no enforcement of this.
Right.
And so again, it goes back to that issue of accountability.
Yep.
And we need to respect people who might need to have e-bikes because of various handicap reasons, ADA accessible reasons.
Yes. And I think there's consensus on that e-bikes make sense. What I don't know is if the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail says, oh, yes, well, we already decided e-scooters are fine and we already decided mopeds are fine.
No motorized vehicles.
Right.
The problem is people need them. And so what is the area between those two? It currently says they're prohibited.
But it doesn't define them, I guess what you're saying. So people don't know
exactly.
That, people might know, oh, I get it. I know what an e-bike is now. You've told me, I get it. It's now a matter of law. Terrific. I didn't know that my moped is a motorized vehicle. So it gets back to awareness, which would be a great question to put in our survey if we're going to ask the public, do you know what are permissible vehicles on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail? That'd be a good question.
And there is no Bruce Freeman Rail Trail organization. This is really the multi-town group. The Friends are a facilitator, but it's really the different towns that have to sit in and have the conversation.
Just thinking. A second ago, Nat, you mentioned the safe, the group.
Safe routes to schools.
Are there other groups that would benefit from us mentioning as we're developing survey, getting public, creating public forums that maybe are tangential? We obviously know the Green Thumbs, is that the name of their unofficial group? They're not actually a government group, but.
They're a community organization, the Green Thumbs.
Okay.
Sorry.
Mary Beth, go ahead.
I have found using the trail that a lot of older people don't seem to be aware that there are kind of travel etiquette, that you travel on the right, pass on the left. And I oftentimes will try to talk to people about that, because I'll have somebody kind of heading straight. A few times I've had like an elderly runner heading straight at me on the wrong side of the trail, that I have to be the one that moves over. And I always think, oh boy, I really like to talk to that person and just explain to him that he's doing it, that there are rules. And so I wonder if, and I've seen it a lot, people walking with walkers or this or that, and not aware that there may be people trying to pass them on the left. And so maybe groups like the Council on Aging or something like that might be
Thank you.
educating. Yeah.
I think that's a great add. That's sort of getting to the heart of what I was saying before. I have exactly experienced what you said, where there would be I'll just say a person of older age with a caregiver having a lovely walk on the rail trail, oblivious to what's going on around them. And then they were frightened when somebody said on your left. They didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And so the biker or other person, they did everything correct, but the walker with the caregiver just didn't know. So I like that notion. I think that also shows, inclusiveness for this effort, that we really are looking at it from all angles. This isn't at the end of the day about biking at all, really. It's about transportation and use of a rail trail by individuals.
Yeah. Safe use by all users, not just bikers.
Yeah.
This isn't a bike path. This is a multi-use trail. It is meant for many different types of people to be able to use it. So, yeah.
And I just think that's important for people to understand. You might, sometimes I'm not saying this happens all the time, but sometimes people, come against the biker. The biker is just one small aspect. Now, I wonder if they're the majority. That would be another question to put in a survey. What are the types of people that you have seen on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail? And then again, this issue of awareness. Oh, I've seen people in a wheelchair. I saw people walking. I saw somebody walking their dog. And again, it's data points for sure, but it's also immediately when you start sharing the data with the public, it pays off instantly with awareness. So I'm going to state what I think I've heard. It's not quite a motion yet, but I'm just going to sort of summarize it. I don't want to curtail the conversation, but sometimes it helps me when I sort of summarize where I think we're at in the dialogue. Now that we have obviously our principles and we have scope, it would seem to make sense that we recommend to the full committee that we, meaning the safety subcommittee, with whatever resources we're supposed to use, proctor a public survey using the similar mechanisms that they did with the green thumbs. We can publish it on social media, we can have it in the newspaper, whatever the right thing is. And then in addition, as that survey is sort of winding down, we schedule at least one, maybe two public forums where hopefully the results of that survey will be known. And we then specifically give the public an opportunity to share their reaction. And again, we would have to recommend to the full committee, what should the forum look like? How long should it be? I've not participated in a forum like this. Do we have discrete questions and that's it? Or is there open forum? So it's kind of what I'm hearing. Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Well, I just have questions. I'm not sure how it was done the first time, even though I was on the committee. I know somebody did an awful lot of work on creating the survey, developing the survey, and then also doing the analysis of the survey in terms of the frequencies of answers, et cetera. So I'm just wondering how would we approach that?
I think we could ask Adrienne because I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure she was heavily involved, as was Tracy, in doing that survey. So I don't have the answer. I don't know, Marcia, if you
I mean,
do.
it's a certain skill set to know how to write a survey. So that was just wondering who,
It was
it's
a
not
group.
what I have.
It was a group effort between Adrian, Tracy, and Nat. And I think Adrian and Tracy did the lion's share of that.
Okay. So then maybe we would engage with them and get sort of their lessons learned from the first survey, as well as, I believe they had public forums too, wasn't there at least one public forum?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
So we can, I don't want to say copy paste because the questions will be different, but copy paste in terms of the how, and then we can just insert the what.
Yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts before we try to form this into a motion? Nat has his hand up. Sorry, Nat.
So a couple of things. You don't have to come up with a motion today, right? You can kind of say, this is what we're talking about, and then you can come back to the committee and say, this is what we want to do. So they're just to free you from the feeling like, we have to look like we're doing something. And I think the second thing is figuring out how you want to tie this into the work of the multi-town group. Do you want to do this before the multi-town group meets? Do you want to talk with them about it? What's kind of the deadline that you're thinking about in terms of doing this? What's the feeling of when you want to have this finished by?
Well, it's interesting you should mention that. I will no longer be a resident of Concord, likely after February 9th, give or take a day or so, depending on the outcome of the request to extend me to the end of my term, which I don't think will pass.
No. We were told no.
Okay.
We were given a clear no on that, which is unfortunate, but it is the way the world works.
Okay. So unless this group meets between now and February 9th, somebody else will have to become a chair.
And we will have to also add another committee member.
Yes.
A subcommittee has to be a minimum of 3.
Yeah. So
I think we talk to either Adrian or Tracy.
that would be brilliant since they've done it before. I would tend to lean more on Adrian, but leave it up to you guys. So you asked timing. Does the full committee meet again in January? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Committee meets at the end of January.
Okay. You said that, we don't have to have a motion today, but if we don't have a motion today, we can't include something in the minutes. And if it's not in the minutes, then we can't present it.
Well, you can include it in the minutes. You're having this conversation. You're having a public deliberation. It doesn't have to be a motion. You can say you talked about it.
Okay, so then we can, even if something wasn't a motion, if it was deliberated, we can then share the deliberations with the full committee.
Right. And who's your note taker?
I am. No.
Okay, there you go. So
Yeah.
Mary Beth can capture this and do it. And Dorcas has her hand up, so I don't want to jump in front of her.
Yep. Please go ahead, Dorcas.
I think I have a question about a survey. I'm not sure how effective they are. I wonder if we could just use the wonderful new Concord newspaper and put a discussion of some of the issues we're facing and recommend that people who have opinions should report it in to some person on the committee.
So almost like a member of the subcommittee is interviewed by the newspaper And at the end of the newspaper article, it says, and if you have comments, you should send them to whatever mailbox.
I think so, because I'm not sure surveys is a good way to get surveys to all interested parties. And I think an article in the newspaper or both newspapers, if you want to, might stir some public interest, and most of the other people won't be interested. I think a lot of people will not be interested.
Okay. Mary Beth?
Well, I mean, I understand the value of what you're saying, Dorcas. I think what then happens is it's a little then hard. You're sort of have this task of analyzing all these open-ended comments and breaking them down into sort of themes and, kind of analyzing them by like, well, this many people said something about safety. This many people said something about almost being run over. This many people said something about speed. It takes a lot of work to sort of break that stuff down into themes. It's like qualitative research then, as opposed to more quantitative, which a survey gives you the benefit of going like, we got 105 responses, 50 of them said speed limits, So I do appreciate the fact that it does attract people who have, who are users, who really maybe have really good things to say that you might not capture in a survey. So I don't know. I think it's hard. Yeah.
Dorcas?
Perhaps a series of articles in the local newspaper rather than one.
Mm-hmm. The way I'm looking at it is I think it's both. I like Mary Beth's notion of quantitative analysis, which I do think is important, but I also am sensitive, Dorcas, to the fact that not everybody's going to want to click something and submit a survey. And so I think it's both. I think the recommendation would be that we do at least one, if not several articles, in the newspaper, and we follow that up at the same time with a survey. And then we end with some public forum, the result of which will be dramatically increased awareness. We hope it will be a sense of community, and it would give us the opportunity to publicize these principles, which will be really helpful, I can imagine, in the newspaper if they start seeing something over and over. So I think it's both, because that way we get the benefit of both.
I could go with that.
Okay. And Matt, I'm sensitive that you said, we don't have to have a motion, but, part of me, perhaps because we're not going to meet again until January, I just feel that it would keep things moving along if we could have a motion.
You're the chair. You get to do, you're the committee. You get to do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
So it's fine. I was just giving you space.
Yeah, no, and I apologize. My computer's about ready to run out of gas, so I'm just going to have to get my cord here. So I apologize for any inconvenience, but I want to make sure I don't, because I think if I stop the call, we lose a quorum. So bear with me. You'll hear a little bit of noise in the background. But so I'd like. Okay, go ahead, please, Mary Beth. Go ahead.
All right. I just want to give some support to the idea of not having this in the form of a motion.
Okay.
Since I think that we are not really prepared to create a survey, or we don't have. I don't know. I don't want to sort of I don't want to concretize something that we don't know yet how we're going to approach it. Whether we're going to, or if we do put in the form of a motion, I think it needs to be sort of like we're contemplating the feasibility of being able to do a survey, or to do multiple articles in the newspaper or whatever. I think we just need to make it a little less of a sure thing. I don't think we have the,
Yeah.
you know.
So what if we recommend to the full committee that we consider things like a survey, articles, and a forum, and we'd like to get the full committee's input on those 3 items. That way we don't have to specify anything. We're saying we met, we think there's value to all 3. We're sensitive to bandwidth, to feasibility, to value, and we'd like to run that by the full committee.
And if we were to go in that direction, are there people on that full committee who would be willing to invest time and skill?
Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah, I could live with that.
Okay. Do either of the 2 of you want to take a crack at a motion then?
I would like to suggest that we recommend to the full committee that we consider several articles in the local newspapers, followed up with a survey and possibly a forum.
Is that your motion?
Yep.
Do I have a second for that motion?
I want to make sure I have the motion correct since I'm taking the minutes.
Okay.
So Dorcas, you're making a motion that the subcommittee recommends to the larger committee that we write several articles in the newspaper and follow that with a survey that gets developed and a public forum. Do I have that right?
Good. Yes.
Okay.
And if Dorcas, you could say, and ask the full committee for a participant who's familiar in these activities, most notably given the work recently performed in Junction Park.
What was the last part?
Yeah.
That into the motion, we ask the full committee if we can have a participant from the full committee who has recently participated in the Junction Park survey effort, for example, and some communications.
So could I shorten that to say, ask if there's anyone on the full committee who can who would volunteer their time and services?
Well done.
Okay.
I'm going to second that motion.
I guess I kind of like to keep Junction Park as much out of it as possible.
Okay. And
We've beaten that thing to death.
I think we did though, right? Did we keep Junction Park out of it?
yeah, we just said, do we have a volunteer? That's all we're asking is a volunteer.
Okay.
We're not mentioning Junction Park.
Okay.
Oh, I
Second.
wasn't even thinking of them when I said it.
Second.
Excellent. Well, I think I seconded because it was your motion, so I had to second it. Okay, so we have a motion before us, and Mary Beth, before we take the roll call, could you read it one more time, please?
Okay. So there was a motion made that the subcommittee, that several articles, not that the subcommittee writes them. All right. There's a motion made that the subcommittee recommends to the larger committee that several articles on safety be written for the Concord newspaper, which would be followed by the development and distribution of a survey and a public forum, and that we ask if anyone on the full committee would be willing to volunteer their time and skill to this safety project.
Great.
I think that's even good. That's even good.
Good. So I'll do a roll call on the motion to accept the motion. Dorcas Miller,
Aye.
Mary Beth Barker,
Aye.
Debbie Adelman is chair. I aye for the motion, which then is passed. I just want to say thank you to Nat for his assistance this evening. Marcia, as always, for your leadership on these sometimes very complex issues. And I think by making this motion now, it will also help, as we know that we can simply be thinking about this while we don't know when the Friends is going to meet again, but at least we can start thinking about these things, keeping it going, if you will. So we're not deciding anything. I'm just going to go back to our agenda to see what else we have for this evening. Correspondence and public comments. I'm wondering if there are any members of the public that have joined today. I don't see any. Okay.
You only have me.
Only, yeah, Nat was the only
Okay.
member of the public.
Are there any public comments?
I do have one comment, which is that the full committee will take up the question of how to bring a new person onto the safety subcommittee, and Deborah, even though you're moving over the border, you are not an alien to us, and we hope that we will continue to see you and have a chance to interact. I really appreciate all the work that you've done on the safety committee, and your work on the e-bike white paper was amazing. So yeah. I'm going to miss you, but I know we'll keep in. Just because you've left the table doesn't mean you've left the conversation.
Well said, well said. And I have a sneaking suspicion you will see me, whether as a member of the public or some other forum. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. Just the intellectual acumen of Mary Beth and Dorcas. I know I've told you this both individually, but it's just, I'm just really so impressed. And I've learned so much from the two of you, as I already mentioned, from Marcia and Nat. So thank you all.
Thank you for everything, Deb. But really, you've been a great chair of this subcommittee.
Thank you. I know it's extra work and I appreciate it.
Yes, keeping us on track.
If there is no further business, I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting at 5:51.
I have one question.
Okay, sorry.
And I think that I am missing something, and it could be just like I have fuzzy COVID brain or something. But I didn't understand, Dorcas, when you said you wanted to keep Junction Park out of this, how my suggestion was inviting it into it. Can you just explain that?
I think I can actually answer for Dorcas.
Oh,
when
okay.
I stated, I inadvertently said something like, let's get somebody who had experience with Junction Park.
Oh.
And so
okay.
Dorcas was like, this is nothing to do.
Okay.
That's all it was.
I get it. Okay. I just thought, oh, well, am I missing something?
Yeah, no.
Okay,
I'm a
thanks.
member of the Green Thumbs too, but I think we've hashed it to death.
Oh my God, we certainly have. I agree.
And for the record, we're very grateful for all the work that the participants of the Green Thumbs have done, and a lovely, lovely park that is so welcoming to the community. And we're so glad that we can work interactively and inclusively with them. So thank you to the members of the Green Thumbs organization. So it is now 5:52. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
No,
Second by Mary Beth Barker. All right, let's do roll call for adjourning the meeting. Dorcas Miller, Mary Beth Barker,
Aye.
Deborah Adelman, aye to adjourn the meeting at 5:52 of the Safety Subcommittee of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee on the 5th of December. Thank you, everyone. And if we don't see you all, best wishes for a wonderful, wonderful holiday season.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.